The universe does not revolve around you. I know that may burst some of your bubbles, but the universe does not revolve around you, and even more so, you do not control the universe. That's actually really, really good news, but there's even greater news. The world does revolve around one person, and it's God. And even as chaotic as the world may seem, He is in absolute control over everything that's happening. We live in a time and a culture. We've been talking about this counterculture thing these last couple weeks, and it's how the culture teaches us one thing, but the Bible teaches us something much different. And one of the things that the culture teaches us about is this word that we call pride. Pride. Pride is not a good thing for us. Here's what pride does. Pride tells us that we are better than other people. Pride will tell you that you over here are better than this person over here. You're better than this person because of whatever financial decision you made, because of whatever relationship decision you made. I'm better than other people. I contribute to society more than this person. I'm better than other people. The enemy does everything he can do to get you to feel like you're better than other people. It could be because of your job. It could be because of your education. It could be because of how much money you have in your bank account. He'll do everything he can do to make you feel better than other people and to puff you up in pride. Pride also gets us to start to think that God doesn't know what He's doing and we know more than He does. I don't know if you've ever experienced this or not, but sometimes God does not work as quickly as I would like Him to work. Sometimes He doesn't work as efficiently as I think He might need to or should be working. Thank God that He doesn't work the way that I would work or the way that you would work. He works in His ways. He works in His timing. He understands things that we don't understand. But pride gets us to think that we know better than God, that we're smarter than God. And we see another picture of that taking place in Daniel chapter 4. So we're going to start in chapter 4, verse number 1. Now keep in mind, this is right after the furnace experience. There was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into this furnace. It was heated up so hot that even the people putting them in got burned and killed. They died. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they did not die. In fact, there was a fourth that was in the fire with them, and that looked like the Son of God. And God took them through the fiery furnace, and they came out of a furnace not even smelling like smoke. And so Nebuchadnezzar, after that happens, Nebuchadnezzar makes a decree and he says, everyone should worship this God, and anyone who doesn't worship this God should be cut into pieces, and their homes should be turned into piles of rubbish, for no other God can save in this way. That's the end of chapter 3. And the beginning of chapter 4 starts with kind of a different Nebuchadnezzar. And here's what it says. This is King Nebuchadnezzar. To the peoples, nations, and men of every language who live in all the world, may you prosper greatly. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me. How great are His signs, how mighty His wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom. His dominion endures from generation to generation. It sounds like Nebuchadnezzar's getting it, doesn't it? I think he's on to something. I think he's figured something out here. He says, as he's speaking to these people, he says, may you prosper greatly. If we're being honest, we live in an extremely prosperous nation. Prosperity kind of rules in the place that we live and our lives are very prosperous. We look at prosperity a lot of times from a wealth, a health perspective, things like that. But this kind of prosperity that he's talking about, this word actually means peace for our souls. You know, sometimes we'll have peace in a situation, but this is like a deep, deep, deep peace. Nothing can shake this. Nothing can change it. It gives us a deep, deep, deep sense of peace for our souls. I think that's something that's lacking in our culture. We don't have we don't have much peace in our lives. We have more anxiety and nervousness than we have of those things. It also is a sense of well-being, that God's taking care of us. We're going to be provided for. We have a sense of well-being. It's a deep sense of well-being. Rather than us providing it, God's providing it. And it's a fulfillment that nothing can disturb. We're so fulfilled with who God is and what God has done in our lives. It's such a deep fulfillment. We don't have to look to anything else to bring us fulfillment. It is God and God alone. And nothing, no amount of chaos in our lives can change that. Some of us actually seem to function better in chaos, don't we? We actually like chaos. We live a little bit better in the chaotic moments of life. And one of the reasons why is because pride also declares, I'm going to choose my own way and I'm going to do as I please. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do what I please, or how I do life how I please. And that's where Nebuchadnezzar was. Let's go down to the next verse in verse number 4. It says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at home in my palace, contented and prosperous. He was at home. He had everything he needed. He wasn't concerned about money. He wasn't concerned about anything. He was completely and utterly content in life. In his mind, he was utterly content. Sometimes we don't handle prosperity very well. Because when times are good in our lives, sometimes we stop thinking about God. And sometimes we forget that God's the one who got us to where we are in our lives. King Nebuchadnezzar was that exact same way. King Nebuchadnezzar, we'll see in just a few moments, he took credit for where he was in his life. Look what I've done. Look how intelligent I am. Look how much work I do. Look at how hard of a worker I am. He started to look at himself and how great he was. And the moment that started to happen again, God gave him a dream. God gives him a dream from Daniel chapter 4, verses 5 through 21. I'm not going to read all those, but here's basically what happens. He sees this magnificent, huge tree that provided shade and cover for many people and many animals. And then he saw a heavenly messenger who called for that tree to be cut down. Now, in his mind, he thought and wanted this to be for his enemies. And so he brought in all of his counselors, he brought in magicians, he brought in people to interpret this dream, and nobody could. And then he brought in Daniel. And here's what it says in verse number 22. Daniel interprets the dream, and he says this, you, O King Nebuchadnezzar, you are that tree. You have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown until it reaches the sky, and your dominion extends to the distant parts of the earth. You, O king, saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump, bound with iron and bronze in the grass of the field. While its roots remain in the ground, let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him be like the wild animals until 7 times or 7 years pass by for him. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree the Most High has issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people, and you will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like cattle and be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone he wishes. Go down to verse number 27, because then Daniel really warns him, and he says, therefore, O king, be pleased to accept my advice. Renounce your sins by doing what is right, and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. It may be that then your prosperity will continue. So he interprets this dream, and he tells him essentially, this tree is going to be cut down. But here's one last warning. Heed my advice. You can still change. There's still time. This can still work. Pride tells us that we don't have to change. Pride tells us that we can do it ourselves. Let's go down to verse number 29. 12 months later, as the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace in Babylon, he said, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" The words were still on his lips when a voice came from heaven. How scary would this be? The voice comes from heaven. "This is what was decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you." Pride had elevated him, that he had built this Babylon. He had done this. He had created these beautiful things. Pride got him to the place thinking that it was all about him and that he had done it all. And sometimes we feel that same way. We live that same way. We have pride in our lives telling it, "Look at this great thing that I have created. Look at this great thing I have done at work. Look at my wonderful family that I have been in." Neglecting that God has been helping us along the process, that God has been the one who's been helping each and every moment of our lives. There's a verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7 in the Living Bible that says, "What are you so puffed up about? What do you have that God hasn't given you? And if all that you have is from God, why act as though you are so great and as though you have accomplished something on your own?" Pride puffs us up and puts other people down. That's why it is so dangerous, and we see Christ as the exact opposite of this. Let's go down to verse number 34, because the good thing is God restores Nebuchadnezzar. It says, "At the end of that time, the 7 years, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, toward God, and my sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and glorified him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, 'What have you done?' At that time, that my sanity was restored, my honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right and all his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble." God restored him. Why? He didn't restore him because his pride increased. His pride, he was restored because he realized that God was the one who did this. He looked up to God. He became humble. God is able to humble those people. God is always ready to respond to broken and humble hearts. It's when we have prideful hearts, thinking that it revolves around us, that we're the ones who cause all these things. But he is always ready to respond to a broken and humble heart. That's a really, really good place for the people of God to say, amen. The second thing I want to talk to you about is this, and you've probably heard this before. We've talked about pride. Now we're going to talk about emotions. You can either control your emotions or your emotions will control you. Imagine if we lived life completely based off of our feelings. Imagine that for a moment. How many of you would feel like getting up for work tomorrow? How many of you would feel like eating healthy? How many of you would feel like exercising? How much would feel like reading our Bible or praying? Matter of fact, I want you to try an experiment tomorrow. If you have little kids or if you have kids in general, wake them up before school and say, "Do you feel like going to school today?" And see what they say. And then say, "Do you feel like eating Cheerios this morning?" They'll probably say, "No, I feel like eating 5 chocolate chip cookies." Okay, we're just here to affirm your feelings. You have 5 chocolate chip cookies. Imagine if we lived completely off of our feelings, how much even more of a train wreck this culture would be. Doing what's best for us is almost it's a direct contrast with what we feel. Doing what's best for you directly contrasts with how you normally will feel about things, okay? This week is Thanksgiving. let's just all say it. Let's just all admit this is a free week where we get to eat a lot of food. Okay? We all know that. We all kind of eat a little bit too much probably at Thanksgiving. Some of you are probably thinking, okay, either this Friday or next Monday, I'm going to get back on the horse. I'm going to get back into the gym. I'm going to do those things. And so we have these plans. But some of us on January 1st, we're going to say in our minds, I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to lose this weight. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to start exercising. And then when it comes time to actually do it, we don't feel like it. I don't meet too many people who are like, I feel like getting up and going to the gym and doing 100 push-ups. Or I feel so good about doing these things. Most of us don't feel it. It directly contrasts with what's best for us. We cannot rely on our feelings to guide our lives. That's what our culture has adopted. Whatever feels good to me, I'm going to do. You've probably heard of this fire analogy before, but a contained fire provides warmth for us. We can cook with it. It can purify precious metals. Unchecked, uncontained fire can go from a spark to a wildfire in just minutes and destroy millions of acres. And if you remember a couple months ago, I think it was in California, almost a whole community was wiped out by uncontained fires. So many benefits can come when we contain our emotions and have self-control, but we also know the destructive side if we give it free rein. Giving our emotions and our feelings free rein to guide our lives is extremely dangerous. But here's the deal. Feelings are not the problem. We're always going to have feelings. Some of you here this morning, you're happy. Some are sad. Some are glad. Some of you are mad. We have lots of different emotions and feelings that go on in us. Those things aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves. It's when we allow those feelings to make choices and motivate our actions in life that our feelings really, really lead down a destructive path. There's a verse in Judges 21, verse number 25, and it says this: in those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit. The Bible, other translations say, everyone did as they wanted. They just got to do whatever they wanted. They acted as if there was no king. And we live in a culture that really lives as if there's no God. And the thing I love about Daniel, the reason why we can go back to Daniel and look to him as an example for us, is his decisions were not based on circumstance or rationalizations he made in his mind. They were based on his trust in God. He had an unshakable faith that God was who he said he was. Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, they were getting ready to be thrown into a fire, and they weren't panicking. They weren't fighting with them. They weren't trying to break loose. They were willingly being put into a fiery furnace because they wouldn't bow down to another god. So here's really how this works, and this may not make us very happy this morning. First, we follow our feelings instead of our faith. We go off of our emotions. We're led by our emotions. Here's something that I think might be good for you to write down on the back of your bulletin or on your phone. Our emotions, opinions, and desires do not determine truth. Aren't you glad for that? You should be. Our emotions run wild. Our emotions tell us one thing when the truth may be something completely different. We've always lived in a world of opinions, but now we have social media, and everybody's opinion can always be freely expressed at any time of the day. Oh, do we have our opinions and desires? Our desires, just because we desire something does not mean that it's good for us. It does not mean that it's right for us. These things do not determine truth in our lives. Here's what Romans 8:6 says. It says, the mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. So here's a good filter for you to think about whenever you're thinking about your emotions, your opinions, or your desires. Does this emotion bring life and peace to my life? Or does it provide destruction? Or does it put someone else down? This is a big one when it comes to your opinions. Do your opinions give you life and peace? Or do they point you towards destruction or towards what other people are doing or not doing? Do your desires, you can get the same picture there. Is it something that leads to life and peace, or is it something that leads down the path that the enemy would have us go down to? It's important for us to get these things under control. So the first thing is we're led by our emotions rather than our faith. The second thing we do is we trust ourselves more than we trust God. This is a biggie. We feel like we know what's best for us. We know better than God does. I know what's best for my marriage. I know what's better for me as a parent. I know what's better for my finances. I know what's better for my relationships. I know what's best for me when I treat people. I know better than God, and that is not a healthy way to live our lives. Trusting in our own selves, trusting in our own goodness. Churches are full this morning of people who are trusting on their own goodness to get them to heaven, rather than the fact that Jesus Christ died on a cross for them to get to heaven. We do not know what's best. God does. And what I've experienced in my life is, and what I've been guilty of is this, is we want God to change our circumstances and we want him to change the people around us, and God's actually wanting to change us. If this circumstance would just change, everything would be better. And God's saying this circumstance would be better if your heart was in the right place. My life would be better if this person would do what I want them to do, or this person would see it from my perspective, or whatever. My life would be better if this person would just change. And I know if you're married in here, you've never ever tried to change your spouse. Oftentimes, when you think someone else needs to change so bad, there's a good chance God is telling you there's something in your life that needs to change. There's something in your heart. He tells us that, Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. You probably have this memorized. If you don't have this scripture memorized, I would encourage you to. Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Trust in the Lord with all, not some, not part, with all of your heart. Trust in him, not yourself. Lean not on your own understanding. Lean on God's understanding. In all your ways, submit, surrender, acknowledge him. You don't make your path straight. God makes your path straight. Let God be the one who makes your path straight in your life. Lastly, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about control. God is right where he's always been. God hasn't moved. We've moved away from God. There's a scripture that if you spend any time in church, you probably heard it. It's a great scripture, but it's 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. If, that's a big if, my people, God's children, if we're willing to humble ourselves, if we're willing to understand our position before a very holy God, if we're willing to pray, not only during tragedies, but during our regular lives and during our daily lives, we encourage you to pray every single day. If we were to seek his face, to seek his heart, seek his ways, seek his standards for our lives, and we were to turn, that's another word for repent. The great thing about God, when we repent to him, he doesn't make us make up for what we did wrong. With God, there's no retribution. If you hurt someone, you can go and make it right with them. But God doesn't say, look how bad you messed up. Here's all the things you must do in order to get it right. He doesn't do that. He forgives us. But the problem in some of our lives is this, is we have to give up control. We think that we're the ones who run all of these things. We have to give up control. I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase before, but it goes like this. As long as everything goes exactly the way I want it, I am totally flexible. I'm going to say that again. As long as everything goes exactly like I want it, I'm totally flexible. So often, we rely on the things that we can control for our sense of security in our lives. We put our trust in money, we put our trust in jobs and bank accounts, our intelligence. We put it in who we know. We put it in things other than God because then we can control it still, rather than letting God control it. Or really, we're just deceiving ourselves that we control it and God doesn't. Because we want to be in control of our lives. It's a natural instinct. It's a natural tendency for each one of us to do. And so one of the things we do, and one of the things that I think we've become accustomed to doing in the church is this, is I think we've become accustomed to having this mentality that we make room for the just in case God doesn't. So we believe God can heal someone. We believe that God can do great things in people's lives. We believe that, man, if I have this health thing going on in my life, I'm going to believe that God can heal me. I'm going to hope that he can heal me. But if he doesn't, then I'm going to do my best to be a good example for him. And I'm not saying that that's a horrible way to live, but I think what's happened is we've stopped believing God still heals people. We've stopped believing and actually trusting that God can heal our bodies or that he can perform miracles in this day and in this time. And so we always prepare, I hope that God does something, and it's more of a hope that he will rather than it is a belief. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their lives were at stake, and they were put into a fiery furnace. Daniel was put into a lion's den. The only way either one of those came out, either situation, is because we serve a supernatural God who can do things that cannot be explained by human mind. And so we're going to ask ourselves the same question we ask ourselves at the end of every week. What's the Holy Spirit speaking to me about today? Is there a pride issue in your life? Do you think you're better than other people? Because God says every single person is on the same field here. Everybody's completely valuable to me. It doesn't matter socioeconomic status, doesn't matter educational, it doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. Every single person is valuable to me. Do not elevate yourself over other people. The second thing he reminds us to do is he reminds us that he's God and we're not. That just frees you up more than anybody else. Let him be God. Emotions. Do your emotions get the best of you? I think at one point or another we've all been guilty of this, but do you live and thrive off your emotions? Have you ever heard someone say something like this? That's just who I am. That's just me. When we say that, what we're really saying is this: I'm not willing to let God change me to who he wants me to be. I wonder if there's people in here who need to just spend a little bit of time in humbling ourselves and praying and seeking who God is, turning from our ways, remembering that God's the one who's actually in control of everything, and we can submit to him. Now, Tuesday morning, I woke up and I just had a strong sense from the Lord about what I explained. That sometimes the people of God, and I've been guilty as a pastor, that sometimes we'll pray for people and we'll lay hands on them and say, God, do what only you can. God, heal their body. God, they need a physical healing right now. God, would you heal their body? But God, if you don't, we pray that, we'll support them and we'll love them and we'll help them through it. And I wonder if we become more accustomed to plan B than actually truly believing that God still wants to do what only God can do. that God can still heal. He can still perform miracles in our day and in our time. And so I know we don't do it very often here at the church. Sometimes we encourage people to come forward for prayer. Sometimes we encourage people to come to the altar. And when you're talking about pride on a Sunday morning, the last thing you want to do is have people come to the altar and say, yep, I've got a pride problem. Yep, I'm going to come to the front. Because what does pride want you to do? Pride's going to keep you exactly where you are because you can fix it. You can do it on your own. You don't really need God's help. Who wants to come up and admit that sometimes their emotions control them more than they ought to? Maybe that they have control issues, or that they need to pray more and humble themselves more. Or who wants to admit that they've been relying on plan B than really believing God is who he says he is, because they've grown up Pentecostal for their whole lives, and yet they've been relying on something other than God for their healing or for whatever it may be in their life. So here's what I've asked. I'm going to ask Pastor Tony to come. He's going to sing a song called Healer, and I know that you don't all need physical healing in here. It talks about God being with us in every moment, though. One of the things that I would like to do this morning is have the privilege to pray with you and have the privilege for you to get right with God what you need to get right with God. And so here's what we're going to do to end service today. In just a moment, I'm going to have you stand, and Pastor Tony is going to sing. And if there's things that God's speaking to you about pride, emotions, control, whatever it may be, I'm going to encourage you, if you need to get with God and work through that, I'm going to ask you to come to this side of the stage. And you get alone with God. We're not going to pray with you. This is you and God time. You do it you feel like God needs to do in you. If you're here and you need God to come through in a big, major way in your life, you might need a physical healing. You might need wisdom for supernatural wisdom. You're stuck in this place and you need God to come through. You need him to break through in your life in a certain area. Maybe it's an addiction, whatever it may be. This morning, I'm going to be over here and I want to pray for you. Now, I have no powers in and of myself other than I'm a willing servant to be used by God. And I'm crystal clear that God woke me up on Tuesday morning to tell me we've got to stop relying on the plan Bs of life and believe on a faithful Father who cares deeply about every need that we have. He knows exactly who needs healing. He knows exactly who needs a financial miracle in their lives. He knows what you need. So before you even had to ask him, he knew. And he knew what we were going to do this Sunday. And so I'm going to stand with me this morning. And I just want you to consider, is pride thinking more highly of myself, higher than other people? Could I manage this world better than God could? In our minds, we've told ourselves we could. Emotions, unchecked emotions. Unfortunately, we just can't take back words. We can't take back how we've hurt people. Sometimes our emotions get so inflamed and so raged that they lash out at people. And they're not things that lead to life. Only God knows where your heart is this morning, and so I've kind of given you some instructions. If you want to just pray with God and get some things with you and God under, talk to him this morning, I want to encourage you to come over here in just a moment when Pastor Tony sings, and come join me over here for prayer. If you need God to do something in your life, you genuinely need God to come through. Let's pray before we do, and then Pastor Tony will begin to sing. Lord, you know every heart here. Lord, I don't know exactly what's going on in people's lives, but you do, and I believe this is just the way that you've designed our service to go and flow. And so, Lord, I believe that you woke me up on Tuesday with you just needing to share something to the church today, and you know what's going on in our hearts. And so, Lord, I pray that in just a moment we would open our hearts to you and say, God, what's the Holy Spirit saying to me? What do I need to work on in my life? God, God knows that we're busy. He knows that we got things going on this afternoon and we got things going on today. And he knows all of the things that have to get done today. But let's spend a few more moments with God today, just allowing God to be God. And I just want you this morning to come and maybe, God, humble. I want to have a humble heart. But this morning, you need God to do something in your life. You need to spend some time with God. I want to do that this morning. Now realize not everyone is going to come forward this morning, and if you don't feel quickened or that God wants you to come forward, that's totally fine. What I do want to encourage you to do is this. There may be a brother or sister in this church who's really struggling with something really, really bad in their life. If you're not going to come forward, would you take a few moments just to pray for those that do respond and come forward this morning? Don't look around or check your phone on Facebook or do any of those things. Let's just take a few moments to press into God and pray that our brothers and sisters would get what they need from God today. They would experience God in a powerful way, and that God would show up where they need him to.